Welcome, everyone. So with that, we're going to first start with the housing update from Pugh Ghosh from the city of Cupertino. It's yours, Pugh.
Thank you, Anjali. I'm just going to go through a very brief presentation, so bear with me while I bring it up. Always bad at doing this.
You should be able to share your screen. There we go.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Just here for a brief intro and update. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. So I thought I got frozen for a minute there. So just a brief update on the housing element and where we are in the process with regard to the housing element. As everybody is aware, well, most of you might be aware that we are in the 6th cycle of our RHNA and housing element update. This covers the years from 2023 to, I believe it's January 2031. Just as background, the housing element is a required general plan element, basically being it's one of the chapters that's required in every general plan. There's certain analysis that needs to occur. There's certain, conclusions that need to be drawn from the analysis, and there's policies that need to be adopted in order to address the analysis, the results of the analysis. And in addition to that, the cities must have a inventory of sites, which would accommodate the city's regional housing needs allocation. And it's updated, this housing element is updated every 8 years to make sure that it's up to date and addresses the issues in the community related to housing. The current draft regional housing needs allocation for Cupertino is 4,588. It is my understanding that the final RHNA will be available in the December timeframe, roughly when the ADAC and MTC boards adopt the final RHNA. The housing element update itself is due by January 31st, 2023. The city's timeline is fairly short to get this updated. I understand that there are new laws that have been passed with this particular legislative cycle that actually shortened the city's timeframe to do that even shorter due to requirements related to public outreach and making sure the draft housing element is available for public comment earlier than that. In general, with regard to the development of the RHNA methodology and the draft RHNA, there have been a number of study sessions and meetings that the council has conducted to understand that more. We've been to the city council back in May 2020 and again in July 2020. And we also had a study session with the Planning Commission in almost exactly a year ago now. In terms of updates and outreach efforts related to the housing element, we've had a number of joint study sessions with it was a joint study session with the Housing Commission, the Planning Commission, and the City Council. These happened in April and May of this past year. There's also been a Let's Talk Housing community meeting, which was held in August through the Planning Collaborative, which is a group of, basically they are our consultants for the entire Santa Clara County Bay Area. And so we've been trying to have some outreach through these planning consultants as well. The meeting that we had was for, I am not mistaken, it was for Los Altos, Saratoga, and for Cupertino. And please don't quote me on that. That's what I recollect at this moment. But we had the largest representation from our end. And there was lots of good input and a discussion that happened around the housing element. The City Council has awarded a contract to EMC Planning, who was the consultant that will be helping us conduct this housing element update. They have, with the 5th housing element update, helped 5 jurisdictions to prepare their housing elements. And with the 6th one, they have 4 other jurisdictions that they're helping with right now. So they're pretty seasoned at doing this. We had a housing element update kickoff meeting on September 28th, which was an internal meeting where we kind of went through, talked to the consultant to get everybody up to speed. And we had a further update with council in October of this year as well. In terms of the timeline, of course, the most pressing thing for us is actually coming up with a draft inventory of sites. Because we need to have our environmental review done once the draft inventory of sites is kind of selected. It can be a broader group of sites than will ultimately end up in the final housing element. But that's what is necessary at this point in order to make sure that we stay on time. We meet the timeline that we have. And of course, there's going to be, public education and engagement that kind of continues from, which has been continuing since May of this year. So that will continue right up until we adopt the final housing element. In terms of engagement, we do expect that there will be 11 public meetings and study sessions with Housing Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council. We're expecting to have 2 community meetings in the form of workshops or other kinds of engagement. We're hoping to have 3 stakeholder meetings. Of course, we've planned for 3 stakeholder meetings. We're still kind of trying to figure out who the stakeholders are, how we kind of move forward with that particular process. There's going to be lots of online engagement and workshops related to inventory of sites and things like that. We also are going to have very soon an educational webpage. The city does have a website already with a lot of helpful links. So if anybody's interested, we'll be going on, and I think the next slide I can provide that link. There's also requirements in the state law to make sure that every part of the community is engaged, and as a result, a lot of the materials that we use to conduct the public engagement will be translated into several languages, and we're kind of working our way through trying to figure out which languages we should be translating to and who our target audience is for that. And in addition, we're hoping to have interpretation services to all of the community engagement that will occur. In terms of upcoming engagement, we are going to the City Council on November 16th, 2021 with an update on where we are with housing element and what next steps are to try to figure out what the draft site inventory would be. We are also expecting a public workshop. Actually, let me step back a little bit. For the meeting on November 16th, we are expecting that we will have a discussion with council on, what is it called? On the Balancing Act, which is a tool, it's an online engagement tool, which kind of collects information and input from the public, including any elected or appointed officials, of how they wish to see development occur. And that map will progressively get refined as we come closer to getting to that final, I call it final, but the final draft sites inventory. And so there'll be multiple iterations of it that will be released over time. And the public including elected and appointed officials will hopefully provide us with input on getting to that final draft sites inventory. There will be a public workshop on December 9th to familiarize the public with that Balancing Act tool, how to use it, how it kind of would appear so that they get a little familiarized with it. Once that, and also it might have some sort of an educational component to it about the housing element. Once we kind of do that, it is expected that that tool will be available for a little bit of time before we start going back to Housing Commission, Planning Commission, and the City Council to sort of bless that final drafts inventory so that we can continue with environmental review on those sites. Here's the website that we hope that everybody will sign up at to receive updates, to participate, to follow the meeting schedule, or get materials and information. So please visit cupertino.org/housing element. There is already a bunch of information on there for people that are interested in, there are other communities that are ahead of us in this process. So you can go ahead and read their housing elements or peruse their housing elements to see what exactly goes into one to be better prepared for when this happens here in Cupertino. So with that, I conclude my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions and anything that I can help with.
Thank you, Pew. So if you have a question for Pew, please raise your hand. JR, go ahead.
Sure. So I'll have to preface this a little bit. Since the last housing element preparation, the legislature passed AB 1397. AB 1397 says that if you're going to cite more than 50% of your affordable housing on non-vacant sites, then you have to support the notion that those sites will be redeveloped during the development period with substantial evidence. So I guess my question is, what evidence does the city plan on relying on in order to show that those sites stand a likelihood of development during the production period?
We do intend to reach out to the property owners for these sites to make sure that they basically show them the value of having housing be part of their zoning designation, and see if they are able to provide us with a letter of support. I am not sure exactly what other substantial evidence the HCD will be looking for. This is where our consultants come in. Last time as well, we did ask for letters of support from all of the property owners that did end up on the housing elements list. So we're hoping that something similar would be helpful and would be adequate, but we'll have to see.
Is there any way that anyone in the public can help to facilitate that process?
Go out and talk to property owners.
Sounds good.
Other questions? I have a quick question for you, Pew. You had said there'll be 11 public meetings and 2 community meetings. What is the difference between a public meeting and a community meeting?
So public meeting is essentially with the appointeds and the electeds there. It's not, doesn't preclude the public at large from providing input at these meetings, but that is hearings essentially to kind of move the process along, to make sure we have adequate check-ins with the appointeds and electeds to make sure that we're on the right track, or get their input on, policies that and other things that we might think is good policy, but if you want to go there or not, just kind of making sure that there are check-ins, regular check-ins. And so the way that we're envisioning this is that we'll have some check-ins for the draft sites inventory. We would have check-ins with potentially, the policies section when we have data analysis and the results, and then we say, hey, we analyze the data, here are the results, and we think here are the policies that should be adopted, to do a quick check-in at that point. And then we would have check-ins for the adoption of the draft housing element. So once we get the input on the sites and on the policies, we would kind of put that together in a draft housing element, which then we would go back to them and say, hey, this is the draft that we'd like to submit to HCD. What do you think? That's when there might be changes that they make or they wish to make, and we have to see how we can incorporate those. Once that step occurs, the draft housing element would be submitted to HCD. Once that happens, they also have to adopt the final housing element. So there's a multiple number of steps.
So there's more public meetings versus community input meetings then?
The public meetings also involve community input. So we would be, there's, as you know, everybody gets to provide their input, but there's also online engagement, which is not listed as a number because that's there. We're going to be doing that as well.
Okay. Connie, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. Pew, you were talking about this balancing act tool, and you went into some detail on it. And then you said that after that goes on, then you will be presenting to the Housing Commission and the Planning Commission. Can you give us an idea when that would be done? Is it after, say, the final RHNA number is due in December? So would it not be until January that you would be coming to the Housing Commission and Planning Commission, or can you? So
that is still a little bit in flux. I know that we have to absolutely go to planning, to City Council in February, I think. So we're trying to figure out the schedule in between. If we go to council in February, let's say, then we would go to Planning Commission potentially in late January. So we're still working out the details. Again, I don't have all the dates just finalized. If I did, I would happily have told you. But
I understand, but especially with this balancing act tool, this is something that you're getting information from the public as well as from the various people.
Yes. So any housing commissioner, any planning commissioner is welcome to provide their input through the tool. It doesn't have to be at a meeting, so you have adequate time to do that.
Okay, thank you.
JR, did you have another questions?
No, I think that was just my hand still raised. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. We have other questions for Pew. So Pew, once you have the dates set, please do send them over to the chamber so we can share that with our network also and help promote the opportunity for everyone to participate in the housing element work.
I think thank you, Anjali. I will, as soon as we know the dates. I think the best way to begin participation would be to attend the December 9th workshop. And that's where input starts getting taken in. So it doesn't matter when we go to Housing Commission and Planning Commission, the date to attend is the December 9th workshop. And
is it Zoom or is it in person?
It will be on Zoom. And so, yes, please feel free to attend that. And, you can start providing input very shortly after that.
Do you have time for it at this point?
No, because I know the tool is still under development. There's,
Okay.
there's a lot of background work that needs to occur before we can, finalize that tool. But I know that each version of the map will be available for like a week or so as we continue to, as input comes in, it gets refined a little bit more. The map gets updated, sent out again, and then another round of input gets taken in. So it's like an iterative process. So we get input at every stage. And that's when we take all of that and we would take it to planning and city council.
Okay, thank you. One last call if you have questions for Pew before we move on to our next guest. Seeing none, thank you so much, Pew, for being here today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. And hi, Shiloh. I hope you guys have a good session. I got to run.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye. Thank you, Pew.
Well, now let me take this opportunity to welcome Shiloh Ballard, the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition Executive Director. We are so excited that you're here with us today, and we are all eagerly wanting to learn more about bike around the county and beyond, not just in Cupertino. So the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. And I'm assuming, do I have privileges to share my screen?
Yes.
It looks like I do. I'm going to go ahead and make that attempt. I always get a little nervous, wondering if something is going to go wrong. Looks like got it here. And I want us to do slideshow. All right. Is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, great. And when would you like me to when would you like this to be completely done?
Take your time. If you want people to ask questions along the way, we can do that, or after your presentation, whatever works.
Yeah. If folks want to put stuff in the chat, I'll try. Well, I probably won't be able to do both.
No, we'll just we're a small enough group that if they raise their hand, I'll point them out to you.
Okay, great. All right, so again, Shiloh with the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. I know a lot of you, see a lot of friendly faces here with us today. And a special shout out to Apple because they're a great supporter of the Bike Coalition and bike infrastructure, as I think a lot of you know. And then also Larry Dean. I think I saw Larry Dean on the call too, who is absolutely fabulous. And you all are so lucky to have him there in Cupertino, helping to lead Walk by Cupertino and really push your community to be safer for folks who walk and bike, and by extension, everyone else. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Bike Coalition. I think y'all are familiar with us, but just as a quick refresher. And then I was going to review some public opinion research we did right before the pandemic. And I think a lot of you have heard this, but it's so fun to be reminded of these statistics. And the intent is hopefully it helps inform the policymaking and the projects that you all help the city to prioritize, plan, fund, and build. So here's our mission up here. We're really about creating a better community by and through the bicycle, the everyday use of the bicycle. For those of you who don't know, there are so many reasons why folks should be riding for everyday use instead of getting in the car. The car makes most people miserable, I think. But there's one specific piece of biking that I wanted to highlight, and it's amplified here on this slide. A lot of people don't know that traffic death is a leading cause of death for Americans, and in particular for kids in the age group of up to 25 years old, it is the leading cause of death. A lot of people don't know that. So, if we care about our youth, it's really in all of our best interest to be making our streets safe. And what I'm talking about here is not just folks on bikes. This is everyone. If you're driving, if you're walking, if you're a bicyclist, the roads are one of the most dangerous places to be. I don't necessarily like starting that way because we don't want to scare people and say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get on a bike. But really, it is a scary place for everybody. And the point is, by doing the kinds of stuff that we at the Bike Coalition advocate, you make the roads safer for everyone, not just bicyclists, because what we're talking about is slowing down speeds, and the kinds of measures that make it safe for everybody. So I wanted to, before we launch right into the polling part, just a quick refresher. The Bike Coalition does two things. We call it people and places because we like alliteration. But on the places side, that's the built environment. It's the infrastructure. It's the green paint you see. It's the bollards. It's the protected bike lanes. And it's the lobbying side of our house. And it's a unique niche that the Bike Coalition plays in Silicon Valley as a whole. There's no other organization for Silicon Valley that is lobbying cities. We are the big bike lobby. At least that's what some people call us. We don't consider ourselves that big, but we enjoy being perceived as powerful. So that's the places side of the house. The other, the people side of the house is the programmatic or the behavior change, the cultural element of what we do. And that is the fact that even if we have wonderful bike lanes everywhere, if the culture doesn't support it, if you grow up as we have in an auto-oriented society, people still won't ride. So we have to have the infrastructure side, which is the lobbying side, and we have to have the programmatic side. And that's things like bike to work or bike to wherever days, which Cupertino has supported. It's things like safe routes to schools, which Cupertino has a wonderful program. It's organizing social rides where we go and we ride to a coffee shop and we ride to the library just so that we can show people that they can do it. So it's the programmatic element. Those are the two things that the Bike Coalition really focuses on in order to transition us to a more sustainable and wonderful place for people to get around. All right, so at this point, I am going to talk a little bit about the public opinion research we did in partnership with the Mineta Transportation Institute. This was done right before COVID hit and we all went into lockdown. So this is basically the last snapshot, the last data set of the before time for how people were thinking about transportation. We did it in partnership, or the polling firm we used, just so that you understand the methodology, is an organization called Change Research. It's founded by one of the first data scientists at LinkedIn. And his idea, in addition to a lot of things, but was to make polling more accessible and more affordable. And it primarily uses Facebook to be reaching folks. So you'll see here, this was one of the first questions we asked was, we were trying to get a sense of what are the factors that people use to determine what transportation mode they're going to choose. And you'll see here that speed is the top factor. Not a surprise to all of us. People want to get where they're going quickly. But what is interesting is that crime is next, safety from crime. And it's different and distinct from safety from traffic crashes. So, but together, safety is a key determinant for how people are choosing to get around. You also see ease of use is high up there. And interesting to note that concern for the environment in this day and age, where we think that everybody is, well, maybe not all of us think this, but a lot of us think that environmental rationale is shaping people's decisions more and more. You can see when it comes to transportation based on this survey That is not necessarily the case compared to these other elements. So if we continue to preach to people, you should ride a bike because it's good for the environment, based on this data, it's not exactly a winning selling point. One other thing to note here is that women, when we disaggregate data and we look at the differences between gender, women feel more strongly about all of these. So speed is more important, safety from crime is even more important. But it was just interesting to see that difference. And I'll be noting some of those differences between demographics as we go through this. So here's one where we asked people, we're trying to get a sense of like, well, do you like driving a car? And so we asked them things like, I drive a car more than I would like to drive. And we also asked them, do you enjoy driving a car? You'll see here that there's a difference between women who have Latina roots and also Asian roots, that they feel more, they do not enjoy driving a car, and they do not want to drive a car as much as they currently do. And you'll see, actually, it was interesting, Trump voters, and this was before the last election. So, the polling firm uses the previous presidential election to get a sense for whether or not there's a correlation between who you vote for and your political inclinations. So you'll see here, Trump voters seem to, they don't mind driving. They're like, yep, driving's just fine. I could drive more, that'd be fine. And also men of Latinx heritage also enjoy driving. It does make you wonder, I always like to ask this question, that if women had designed our transportation system, would we all be driving as much as we do, given that they say here that they don't like to drive as much as they are forced to? On this slide, I want to highlight essentially some of the differences in ridership. And you'll see one column here, we have riding to a destination, which is different than the next column, which is riding for recreation or exercise. And you can see differences there. You see differences between gender, you see differences in the age groups. But what I really want to highlight is you go down to that last category that focuses on geography. And I want to point out, that's where you start to see really big differences. So central San Jose, which is more of the downtown urban core of San Jose, contrasted against South County, places like Gilroy. Huge difference in ridership to a destination. And for us, this is really important data. And for you all in Cupertino, as you're planning your city and trying to move people to more sustainable ways of getting around, it's important, really important, and this is, y'all just discuss the housing element because that's related, but land use is so key to our ability to be meeting our goals for getting folks out of cars and into more sustainable ways of getting around. If we're not building our, if we're not planning and making our built environment in a way that things are close together, it's dense, you can ride easily to places, something people call the 15-minute city, you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot in being able to make these kinds of changes. So, sorry, there we go. One of the things that I want to highlight on this slide is the top question and the bottom question. The top question, excuse me, asks people, if you want to get to somewhere by bike, is it, are the places too far for you to get to by bike? And generally people say, yeah, places are too far for me to ride to. And the thing that we like to highlight about this is that there may be some truth to that, but it also speaks to the work that we do on the people side of the house, the behavioral, programmatic, cultural side, where we run programs like Bike to Work Day and like Viva Calle, which is San Jose's Open Streets program, Because what happens is on those days, if any of you have participated in Bike to Work Day and staffed an Energizer station, what you see is someone, because of the program, decided to try riding their bike for the first time. And they rode 7 or 8 miles to work. And they have a big fat smile on their face because they did it. And they realized they did it. And they realized it was easy. And that this question here, many of the places I need to go to are close enough to reach by bicycle. There's a perception in people's minds that things are too, once you get past that 4-mile mark, people are like, no, that's too far, can't do it. But by running these programs like Bike to Work Day and Safe Routes to Schools programs and Viva Calle Open Streets programs, we use that kind of an event to get people to try it once, and then they realize, oh, it's doable. So that's good because it speaks to the programs that we're doing and that it is the right way to go. The other one I wanted to highlight is at the bottom, and that is that when you are, basically it asks, I know several people like me who routinely bicycle to get around. And essentially what the data told us is that, and this is not a surprise, when you are around people who do certain things, you tend to do them more too. And what this data showed is that the more people are around people and know people that ride bicycles, the more likely they are to ride bicycles as well, and vice versa. And this speaks to the cultural aspect as well. Again, programs like Bike to Work and Bike to Wherever Day, where when we create a month-long program or a day program where everybody on that day is doing the same thing, and the culture says on that day, this is what you do. And it is normal to ride a bike, and it is okay to get to work a little frumpy and stinky, that people will try it and they'll do it. All right, since we're talking to Cupertino, you all are in Cupertino, I really enjoy highlighting this one because you all have a wonderful Safe Routes to Schools program. I'm sure some of you have on occasion been by Homestead when school is getting in and out, and it is just amazing the number of youth that are riding to and from school these days, especially given all the infrastructure that's been built up around the school. But you can see here in that second column, it essentially says, if you rode as a preteen, you are more likely to ride today compared to the average. And if you rode as a preteen and continued to ride as a teenager, you're even more likely to ride. And this is interesting data for us all, in part because when we structure Safe Routes to Schools programs, we primarily target elementary schools, and we do not move those programs into middle school and high school. And what the data shows here is that if we are investing in, if we were to continue to invest in teenagers, that can help us ensure that people are going to ride as an adult, but we don't currently do that. So something from a policy perspective to consider in terms of where we spend our Safe Routes to Schools money. There we go. I am good. Let me do a time check here.
You're good.
Okay. All right. So, and this is an important one for the chamber, as you all are representative of the business community. We asked folks, you know, does it getting to work and having to look a certain way or appear a certain way, is that a barrier for you in choosing to ride? And you can see here, so we ask, bicycling to work would make someone too sweaty to be professional, and bicycling is incompatible with the clothing people need to wear to work. And you'll see here, as I alluded to earlier, there's a difference in the genders. There's also a difference in age groups. So you can see women absolutely believe that they need to look professional, and that's a barrier for them in riding their bikes to work. And you'll see that amongst younger kids, age 18 to 34, they feel strong, even more strongly than women do. So something for businesses to consider as they're trying to create a culture that entices people to ride to work is that, I often tell people who are in charge of a workplace, try to set a culture where you don't have your women or your younger folks don't feel that pressure as much. What are you doing to create that culture that a woman doesn't feel like she's got to look really, really awesome at work in order to be considered professional? And same for young people. And the flip side also is basic things for a workplace, providing showers, providing a place to store your clothing so that you can change, those kinds of ways of breaking down those barriers. All right, this is one of my favorite slides because on the more on the programmatic side, we were trying to test different ways of getting people to ride. So we asked the question, I would ride if, and then, fill in the blank. If it was more, if more of my friends were riding and there was a social element to riding more. That was one of the questions. I would ride if my employer offered some sort of incentive for me to ride more. I would ride if my doctor shook his or her finger at me and said, you should be exercising more and riding a bike is a good way to do that. I would ride if I felt more safe, if the roads were more safe. And then I would ride if there were classes on how to ride safely were provided for me. And you can see here that safety, and we know this from going back to that first slide, that safety is a huge impediment for people riding more. So we have to fix the infrastructure so that people feel safe riding a bike. That is by far the number one thing that we can do to break down that particular important barrier. Also interesting to note that of these other items, classes wasn't a winner. It's important, but it wasn't one of those things that really stuck out. Instead, in addition to the doctor shaking their finger at you, employers offering incentives, and then also making sure that there's a social element to riding is something that will get folks to ride more for everyday use. All right, so here's another one of my favorite slides. We ask people what kinds of bike facilities they feel most comfortable on. So all the way from just your skinny white line that differentiates a bike lane to an awesome trail, a completely segregated off-street trail. No surprise, everybody says, you know what, if I could get everywhere by trail, I would ride a bike. And they say bike lanes just aren't going to do it. And on this, there was a huge difference between women and men. Women generally said that they do not feel safe in just a regular bike lane. And men were more likely to say, yeah, I feel safe out there. What I wanted to also say on this is, so the vertical posts between bike lanes and parking buffered bike lanes, this is where we at the Bike Coalition focus. We focus on trying to create, knowing that trails and an off-street path are the best piece of infrastructure, and that's what's going to compel people to ride more. And knowing how incredibly difficult it is to build trails and how expensive it is, we at the Bike Coalition focus on creating a trail-like feeling using the on-street network. So looking at our street space and allocating it differently, narrowing street travel lanes for cars, creating more space for bikes, creating buffers, creating protection, whether it's with a line of cars or bollards or some other kind of barricade. This is where we at the Bike Coalition focus. What I will say also is that one of the things that differentiates Cupertino from almost every other city is that you all have focused on building out more trails. And you've invested in planning and resourcing off-street paths. And a lot of other cities, they focus on the on-street network. So, given that that is one of the best ways to get folks riding bikes, kudos to Cupertino. Again, here's an interesting one, because I know you all have battled. Anytime we start talking about things like parking, it becomes a big battle. Doesn't matter what the topic is. We were asking folks what kind of policy changes they would be comfortable with. And so one of the questions was, do we need more lanes for cars to be going on our streets? And people were like, yeah, we do. We need more space for cars. And we said, do we need more space for parking cars? And people said, oh yeah, yep, we need more space for parking. Give me more space to park my car. I want to drive right up in front of that retail establishment. Don't make me walk any more than I have to. I want to park wherever I feel I want to. So here's the interesting one. We essentially asked folks a question to test whether they think people drive too fast. We said posted speed limits for cars are set too slow. And the answer was no, which indicates to us people would be okay slowing cars down. This is really important because when you look at a Vision Zero rubric, Vision Zero being a worldwide effort to reduce to zero the number of fatalities and major injuries, speed is the number one determinant of whether or not someone's going to die or be severely injured. And so when we ask people, are you okay slowing down cars? They say yes. And so that's good news given our efforts to make the streets more safe. All right, so takeaways before I wrap things up. Again, real demographic differences between men and women with specific cultural overlays. Again, slowing down speed, and then land use as being a key indicator. And I wanted to just highlight some of the ways that folks can get involved. And specifically, I wanted to highlight again and spotlight the great work of Walk Bike Cupertino, that is where, plug in to what the good work that Walk Bike Cupertino is doing and get more folks involved, because they're doing just great work. I think that is all. I will stop there and ask if folks have questions for me.
Thank you so much, Shiloh. And yes, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we can go from there.
I stumped you all.
How do you do? where do you wave your hand?
Go ahead, Larry.
I'll just elbow my way right in here. Shiloh, great presentation. I learned a lot from what you had to explain and describe. It'll be interesting to see what the data looks like if you were to take that snapshot today versus 2 or 3 years ago. But my question is, with Rod Dearden here, Cupertino, to me, I would sarcastically say it's a drive-through city. And I think one of the biggest reasons we have major traffic problems in normal times is because everybody from Almaden Valley or Los Gatos is commuting up to Palo Alto or North Sunnyvale. And we make it almost too easy for them to come through town. With the advent of electric bikes, I think that's going to change that. I think we're going to see a lot more. Is that the bell? Am I out of time, Anjali? Or
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So what do you see, and what is being done to make it easier to bike through Cupertino? if you're living in Campbell or living down in Elmadam Valley and heading to the northern parts, what do you see?
Yeah, great question. E-bikes are huge. It's statistically, you see that it is a segment of the bike industry that is growing significantly. So people are trying it, they're loving it, they're realizing that an e-bike can, if you go back to that one of the slides that shows people think the places they need to go are too far, the e-bike bridges that. The e-bike extends the length of people's perception that like, oh, I can only go 4 miles, but on an e-bike, I can go 7 or 8 miles. So it really serves that tool. So the other thing that I'll say on this, Larry, is more and more public agencies are putting rebate programs in place to subsidize the purchase of an e-bike. We, for example, at the Bike Coalition are on contract with Peninsula Clean Energy. I know that doesn't cover you all, to help them help their e-bike rebate program get out to the masses, and in particular it targets low-income individuals, and then provide training and rides to get people using the e-bikes as well. Does that answer the question, Larry?
Yes. Are you seeing much in the way of community between San Jose and Cupertino, I guess specifically, integrating these major bikeways to make it easier to come from Campbell and get up to Mountain View?
Yep. Yeah, that's, absolutely. VTA does their countywide bike plan that is intended to try to create these seamless networks across jurisdictions and be getting the jurisdictions to be working more together. So still a lot of work to be done, but absolutely the plan is there to do that. I see Tina's hand up.
Thank you, Anjali. Shiloh, good to see you. It's been a while. Thank you for giving us all that research and data. I think it was really interesting to see. I know some of those data points and how that can affect the city and quality of life in general, but some were definitely surprising, good surprises, right? My question to you is, do you collect any data, or do you have any information on how, more bike traffic could affect small businesses in a city in a positive way? Because there seems to be a lot of misconceptions around that too. And I think if we can include that segment in your story, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, no, good point. Yes, the data absolutely exists, and I can send a few links. This is in part, this is the impetus behind Open Streets programs also. I mean, there's many reasons you want to do an open streets program, but for San Jose, for their Open Streets program, Viva Calle, one of the things they do is collect data and ask people who go, did you spend money at businesses along the route, to try to show that, look, I mean, me personally, this is anecdotal, but me personally, when I'm on a bike, it is so easy for me to stop at the ice cream shop when I'm, on my ride, or just stop anywhere, because I don't have to find parking. It's right there. And I can pop into the chocolate shop and I can pick up a dozen chocolates on my way home. I used to do this, but be riding home from Whole Foods and there was a chocolate shop, and it's like, okay, I'll just stop here. So yes, that data exists, and we can send over some links.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Shiloh? Seeing none. Thank you so much, Shiloh, for being here. It was great information, and we can share, we record this, so we'll be definitely sharing this information online once it's edited a little bit. But thank you so much for being here today. And with that, it's open. If anyone would like to share any upcoming events or anything else with us, please unmute and go ahead and share. Well, seeing none, I'm just we're gonna have our December LAC. We are having De Anza College present their redistricting, or not redistricting, but their district election maps and stuff. So that'd be an interesting presentation. So please plan to attend it December 2nd, or December 2nd or 3rd, whatever is the first Friday of the month. And we have the holiday season coming. Remember to shop local and support our small businesses. As you know, we have the I Love Cupertino community gift card program going. And now we have Tina on board, who is a big advocate of it. And she made that program go huge in Fremont. And we are hoping to be able to do this, have her help us replicate that here in Cupertino. So hope you can support local businesses as we get into the holiday season. And thank you all for being here today. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.